Внимание! Система периметр активирована.
Враги подходят со стороны! Не пытаются обойти! Прикройте меня! Прикройте меня!
Внимание! Система периметр активирована.
From 1947 to 1991, the world lived on the edge of extinction. Missiles in silos, spies in the shadows, a financial battleground still unknown to most. A doctrine to end all life as a deterrent to open war. That was the Cold War, and some say it never really ended.
I'm gonna blow you up!
This is Dead Hand Radio, your source for Cold War history. Our mission, to decode the strategic use of psychological warfare, black budgets, espionage, and nuclear brinkmanship. To uncover the hidden power structures still shaping our world.
My guest for this episode is Jeremy Bailey, former U.S. Army officer, business strategist, and entrepreneur with a background in military service, corporate restructuring, and startup innovation. Born in 1973 and shaped by the Cold War era, Jeremy recalls witnessing historic moments like the fall of the Berlin Wall and shares formative experiences that influenced his paths towards service and leadership. Inspired by his father's military service during the Vietnam War and a career in defense contracting, Jeremy was exposed to military culture and air shows from a young age. Fascinated with the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars because of its heavy firepower and large crew capacity, a connection he made much later after he chose to become an armor officer. His training took him from California to Fort Knox, Kentucky, where he learned battlefield strategy and team-based warfare. Jeremy's service with the military ended May 5, 2005. Today he blends discipline, entrepreneurial grit, and a deep sense of purpose, offering a unique perspective on leadership and the ongoing quest for meaning in a rapidly changing world. Throughout this multi-episode interview, Jeremy shares insights about business and military experience and describes in great detail two unusual incidents that to this day leave him questioning what he saw. Here's my conversation with Jeremy Bailey. When did your service start?
So my service started when I got my commission as an officer in 1996. So this was while I was in college at University of California, Riverside. And I was there studying psychology. And as part of my decision to go to that college, I had gone down to my local recruiter and said I wanted to be an officer and go through ROTC while I was in college. So I didn't go through any ROTC or military up to that point. So it was all kind of new to me going into it. And the funny thing is when I got to Riverside, I found out that the local ROTC branch, there wasn't one on UC Riverside campus because they wouldn't let it. They would not let them there on campus. So I had to actually commute while in college to Cal State San Bernardino to do the ROTC program. So that's where that was my local ROTC group. And then that was managed out of Claremont McKenna College. And so whenever we had to go meet the colonel, that's where we would go. So yeah, 96.
Okay. So your time in service, did it start with your ROTC? Did you get credit for that time?
I mean, as a cadet, yes. So basically, the route that I took, you sign up as a cadet, you go through a couple of different summer camps. And then during the year, you're working with your unit, like in my case at San Bernardino, learning about the Army life and leadership and, how to be an officer and all those different aspects of that role that come into play. So while I was in college, I was also having to go it was really like 3 times a week. We do PT in the morning. That's physical training for those who don't know. And then attend a class. And so I was back on campus at UCR by like 9 in the morning after having gone through all that. And then I start my college day. So it was a bit of a grind.
What was your major while you were in college?
Psychology. Yeah.
Really?
It was, yeah.
We might have to dive into that.
Yeah, I chose that major because I thought maybe I would be a therapist or something. I was interested in people, and they had a really good program at UC Riverside for psychology. But the funny thing is, like a lot of people, once you get into it, you realize, like the job coming out, I'd have to be a social worker. Nothing wrong with that. That's a fabulous vocation. But I had also started taking business courses because I was done with my psychology courses. I had like another semester, so it was all business courses because I started getting interested in that. And that was the route that I ended up going down. So it's funny how that works. But the psychology came in very handy as an officer, as a consultant, and then as an entrepreneur too.
Well, we'll circle back to that because psychology has always been an interesting topic to me too. One thing that you did say though that I do want to dig a little deeper on, and that is the social services career. I've known some people that work in that career, and they say it's one of the most stressful jobs you could have because you're dealing with people at their worst. Not because they're violent or mean or physically hurting other people, but because they are so down in their lives that they're looking for somebody to pick them up and
Absolutely.
help them with that. So that's where a lot of people in social services have a very short career.
Absolutely, yeah. It's incredibly stressful. I think they have a high suicide rate too. It's just
I wasn't going to go there, but
yeah, it's
that's
tough.
true.
Yeah.
How did you end up self-employed? And tell me a little bit about your business.
Okay. So let's see. After, it's a bit of a story here, but after I graduated from Riverside, I had to go to training at Fort Knox, Kentucky, for armor officer basic course. That's basically where you learn the job of the armor officer. You learn about the tanks, how to fight them, how to maintain them, strategy, all those kinds of things. And there was a delay. So for about a year, I was just literally waiting to go to training. So I was doing a bunch of different temp jobs. And I just signed up for a local temp agency, and they sent me to like Hewlett Packard and Fleetwood Enterprises, which is an RV maker, a bunch of different companies. And I was just, making copies and putting stuff together, just, $15 an hour or whatever it was back then, just passing the time until I had to leave. And during that time, I was kind of, watching the people around me and trying to get to know people and like, how did you come in, at what level, what school did you go to, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of realized that the best thing I could do is go to graduate school. And so during that 1 year, I studied for the GMAT, which is the test you have to take to get into a business school for graduate school, an MBA program. And I studied for it and took it just before I left for Kentucky. And while I was there doing my officer training, I was accepted into University of California, Irvine. So from there, I was at Irvine for 2 years in the master's program, while also serving in the National Guard.
Master's for psychology?
For business.
Okay.
Yeah. Master's of Business Administration.
Okay. I kind of had a feeling you had a background in business somewhere in there.
Yeah. So yeah, I took a hard right turn from psychology to business. I finished that program in 1999. And my first job was with what they would call a Big Four accounting firm back then. Some of them are no longer around, or they merged or changed their name or what have you. But that's where I really kind of got into business. The group I started with was a corporate restructuring group. It was basically a consultant to a company that's failing financially. And so the bank will, they'll inform the bank they can't pay the bank's debt. And so the bank would say, well, you need to hire a professional to help you through these troubles that we believe, like we can rely on for like third-party information, and they'll keep you guys honest, kind of thing. So we would be on a short list, and we'd go in and pitch the company, And then they would hire us. The company itself would hire us, and then we would communicate with the bank as well. So we'd help the management team turn the company around. We'd communicate all that to the bank, try to get the bank off the company's back. So we've got time to do all that. So I did that for 15 years. Very stressful.
Seems to me like it would be a good training experience to learn how to run a business by learning not what to do or what not to do.
There are a lot of different reasons why businesses fail. And when you spend 15 years in corporate restructuring, you get to see the full smorgasbord, everything from bad management to a bad industry, economics, to like the black swan events that come in and wipe a business out. Like, it's across the board. And most of the time, frankly, it's the employees who suffer. You've got a lot of layoffs that happen. We had to do lots and lots of layoffs, and you see how people get affected. There was a company that, basically it was almost like a family employment agency where like everyone and their mother and their family, like everybody, cousins, nephews, nieces, whatever, all worked at the same company. We're all going to get laid off at the same time. Just terrible. So.
Okay, you did that 15 years. Is that what kind of gave you the motivation or inspired you to start your own business?
Yeah. So I started to feel like an owner when I would walk into these companies, and I could see what needed to be done and how to do it and what was needed, and who should stay, who should go. And I didn't always have the power to make all of those changes. And there were a few times where I did take C-level positions where I had that power, but it wasn't every single time. So I started to think like an owner, like if it was my business, how would I act? And so I started to get away from this feeling like a consultant more to like an owner, and realized at that point I kind of needed to go off and do my own thing. There's a lot of stress involved with, corporate recovery type work. And I was definitely feeling it. So it was kind of time for me to go off on my own.
I'm sure your time in the military, being a leader in the military, helped you in some of those areas too.
Yeah, definitely. ROTC is pretty good in terms of training you about what leadership is. It's, to boil it down, it's basically lead from the front. It's follow me is the phrase that they use. And I realized that was kind of key to all of it. Like, if you weren't willing to put in the work, no one else is going to be willing to put in the work. If you're not willing to stay up late at night and make it happen, no one else is going to do that. But if they see you doing it, then they realize like, hey, maybe this is what I should be doing too. And then it becomes a team effort. So that's that's a key to the whole thing. And I absorbed that part of it as a cadet, but I think I learned how that really works in real life when I was actually a lieutenant in an armor branch. Shout out to the 185th in Corona, California, because that was the battalion that I was assigned to. But yeah, I kind of learned there, what leadership looks like in real life.
And so talk about your business now that you started it when?
The business that I started right out of consulting. The first thing I did was I started an investment business, a registered investment advisory. I had really gotten deep involved in investing in public markets, stocks, bonds, also in real estate, at a small level. I don't want to make it sound like more than it was, but that was something I spent years just reading book after book after book. I used to go to, when I was living in downtown LA, I'd go to the public library and just get a backpack full of investing books and walk them home, read them all, and take them back and fill the backpack up again. So that's a steady drumbeat from that point on, is investing. So that's one of the things I'm really interested in, public markets. I get into the really deep value stuff, like the really deep stuff. So we can spend a whole podcast on that, and then some. Also, a little bit of golf, kind of like to get outdoors. I played a couple weeks ago with a friend. Like to do more of that. And then some home improvement. Andrew knows that I've been working on a home improvement project for the last almost 2.5 years. And guess what? I moved in this last weekend. Thank you. Yeah, it's been quite interesting. But yeah, I do that, and then I'm a dungeon master. So in Dungeons and Dragons, that kind of fills my plate up. I mean, that's already a lot right there. So after the investment business, I had been running that for a couple of years, and I wasn't really enjoying the feeling of charging fees to people. And it was a tough time to start it because the stock market just took off like a rocket. It was up like 25% the first year, something like 18 to 20% the second year. And I was still trying to deploy capital. So there just wasn't enough time to even try to keep up with what the market was doing. So I decided I needed to probably get out of that business anyway. It was going to be tough to grow it. And I just didn't like the feeling. So I had a friend of mine, and I had dinner one night, and we both decided, hey, we want to do something that's more sort of mobile, so more internet based. And so we put our heads together and spent 6 months trying to look for an idea, and finally stumbled on it's a very niche business, but it's a cosmetics business that creates custom cosmetics for ladies with gray hair. I'm agnostic about what kind of business I'm in, as long as it's a good one. And we try to disprove that this was a good one. That's the first step, is try to prove it's going to be a bad business to be in. Couldn't do it. So that's how we got started. And now we've got multiple brands that service a bunch of different demographics. Our company's called Burgeon Brands. You can go to burgeonbrands.com if you want to see more about that.
I'd love to. How do you spell it?
Burgeon. Okay. Yeah. It's the word to grow. It just means to grow. Yeah. We put a little flavor on it by saying Burgeon instead of Burgeon.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. So cosmetics, and it's online, right?
Yeah. We sell, majority of our business is Amazon, but we also have our own website, and we are also on walmart.com. We're currently on eBay, but we're getting off that platform. But yeah, we're increasing our SKU count on Walmart right now too, so you can find stuff there.
Are you having pretty good growth?
Yeah, it was great until 2 years ago. I think once the election started heating up, people started freaking out a little bit. Most retailers had a big pullback in their activity, and we're part of that group. So it flattened out, but we had really high growth for the first 5 years. So we think we'll get there again. It's, things have to calm down a little bit.
It will.
Yeah. In the meantime, we're expanding product types and, like I said, new brands and things like that too. So we've got plenty of ways to grow.
What inspired you to go into the military?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it started pretty young for me. There were a couple of different influences. One is my father served. He was drafted into the Navy during the Vietnam War. And he served on the USS Enterprise, the aircraft carrier. And he was a aircraft mechanic repairing the electronics, and he was studying for electrical engineering at the same time. So his job, once he was out of the Navy, was working for a defense contractor that made electronics for the cockpits of fighter aircraft. And that took him kind of around the country, so we went with him. So I was kind of raised around like air shows and, military bases, and I became absolutely obsessed with the F-14 Tomcat, especially when Top Gun came out. And so my dad would actually take us to the end of the runway so we could watch the Tomcats take off, and it was like the coolest thing ever. So it was a bit of that. It was also, I remember watching like Hogan's Heroes and, like old school, Vietnam War movies and things like that, even World War II stuff. And it was, it was fascinating. I kind of just felt like, if you have the ability to, you should serve, if you're so interested. So that's really kind of, why I started going down that path. Now, originally I wanted to be a pilot, but my eyesight had other plans for me. Yeah, back in those days, they didn't really have LASIK or anything like that, so I couldn't correct my vision well enough to actually be a pilot. So, so I went Army.
That's cool. Why did you choose Army? I mean, it sounds like you were around a lot of airplanes and stuff growing up, and your dad was in the Navy. Usually, generational service follows the same what the influence is, but you went a totally different direction.
Yeah, I've always kind of done that. Like, I didn't even tell my parents that I was signing up to be a cadet. They freaked out because they thought I had just enlisted, and I had to explain to them, no, I researched it and found out you can, become an officer through this mechanism or whatever. But it was really, I thought about Air Force, I thought about Navy, and I felt like I just needed more of a challenge, something a little more, like less, I don't know, corporate feeling, less bureaucratic feeling. I was very uneducated about the other branches, so it was a decision based on ignorance, really, more than anything. But I thought Army was a good fit. I definitely was not athletic enough to be a Marine, but I thought I could slide by in the Army. And slide by is basically what I ended up doing. So that's really why I decided to go Army. I thought maybe I could do military intelligence or something.
Anybody else in your family?
My grandfather served in the Canadian Air Force. It's got a different name. I don't know what it's actually called. Canadian, yeah. So yeah, my grandfather's Canadian. My mom is Canadian. So I'm half Canadian, I guess you could say. So he was the other person to serve. I mean, in my sort of quote unquote immediate family, that's kind of it. And then there's me, and so far nobody after me.
Okay, you mentioned Hogan's Heroes. Was there any other specific movies or authors? And you also mentioned several times in the past in talking that you like Tom Clancy books.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I just thought of something. So my cousin Ronnie, I'm not exactly sure what the family tree is there, but he was a Navy pilot, and he actually ended up as the commander on the USS Enterprise. And so there was a ceremony where it was being handed off to him to be commander of that ship, and they flew my dad and my mom out for that ceremony, which was pretty cool.
Very cool. That is a good anecdote. No, thank you for sharing that one. That's good. Yeah. So back to your all
right. So Tom
cultural
Clancy.
Influences.
Yeah, Tom Clancy was a huge deal. So my dad was the first to be interested in sort of military history books, mostly fiction. And they would be laying around the house, and I wouldn't have any other books to read. And so I would start reading them. And once I found Tom Clancy, I mean, it was over. It was just nonstop, Red Storm Rising and Clear and Present Danger. And I kind of fell in love with that character, Clark, who's this sort of badass SEAL. He gets involved with the CIA and stuff, and he's, he can do whatever he wants. But so just got really interested in the intrigue and sort of the inner workings of the military industrial complex. I just found fascinating. So yeah, he was a great one. Flight of the Old Dog is one of the books that I read, and it was a lot of military aircraft, dealing with those kinds of secret missions with military aircraft and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. So I was always around it, I grew up with wallpaper that had airplanes on it. I had visions of being a Cobra pilot and then an Apache pilot, helicopters, for those who don't know.
I'm intrigued to ask why you didn't go into the helicopter.
Just the eyesight.
Oh, really? They wouldn't let you
even for
that, huh?
No.
Wow.
I'm not sure I'm smart enough for that anyway. They usually only take the top guys. And as a cadet, I mean, I'll be frank, I was a B student from high school all the way through grad school. I was never top of the class in anything. Just a guy who's persistent and diligent and gets it done. That's what I do. I finish stuff. So if I start it, I finish it. Whether it's basic training or anything else, there's just no quit. I'm just not going to happen, even if I'm not fully suited for it. So yeah, just just kind of average cadet. So how I got into armor, there's a theme here. So aircraft, vehicle, tank, right? There's a theme here, and it actually goes back to Star Wars.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
I believe it.
When I was a kid, I first was obsessed with the X-Wing until I realized that only one human pilot can fit in it. And then I became obsessed with the Millennium Falcon because you could have like a whole bunch of like your crew, your team or whatever. And we did a lot of road trips when I was a kid. And so just being in the car with the family and stuff, it all sort of came full circle when I had the chance to go armor branch, and I thought to myself, that kind of fits the whole theme here. I got a vehicle, can be my little, my mobile house with a giant gun in the front of it, and have my crew with me. Like it just kind of all fit. So,
did you get to name your tank?
I can't tell you the name of it. That's actually classified.
Really?
Sorry, no, I'm kidding.
Wow.
It's just called the Commander's Tank because that's what it was. Like when we had to huddle up or something, it'd be like meet at Commander's Tank.
Big Bertha, not something like that. Chewbacca.
I tell you what, if you're gonna name an M1A1 Abrams tank, it better be pretty badass.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, pretty badass.
Talk a little bit about the Cold War, and if any of that had any influence on you growing up. I mean, do you remember what year or what era did you grow up?
So I was born in 73.
Okay.
So you're like 7 years older than me, something like that. So we kind of shared a lot of the same general time frame in the late 70s and all the 80s, early 90s. Yeah, I mean, given that my father was in the defense industry, the Cold War was ever prevalent, and my parents would keep a keen eye on politics and what Gorbachev was doing, and we would listen to Reagan's speeches and stuff like that. And I remember when the Berlin Wall fell. So it was constant. It was just like a steady negative drumbeat, through my childhood. We didn't dwell on it, of course. There are a lot of great things about growing up in that time frame. The 80s, just amazing, right? Yeah. But the buildup of armament and the not knowing if the world was going to be obliterated in nuclear war. It takes
the movies didn't help either. I mean, there were a crazy amount of movies about the end of the world because of nuclear annihilation back in those days.
Yeah. But and still, why are people so interested in seeing movies about the end of the world? No matter how it ends,
that is
they're
a
huge
question
hits.
I ponder.
It's
often.
weird, right?
Yeah.
It's like we're obsessed with it. Like we know the hammer's coming. We want to see what it's going to look like. Right. I don't get it.
And I don't think people would actually want to live through the end times, the end of the world. I think it's just intriguing to imagine what it would be like to live in that period, because you got movies like Mad Max, the lone warrior on the road, fighting against the barbarian hordes. Those kind of stories are ingrained in us from millennia. Right. Going back to the beginning of human history.
Yeah, it's going backwards to what our evolutionary biology is. Yeah.
You definitely, and psychology is where it comes into play.
Yeah, I personally think that a lot of the fascination with that kind of story is the imagined relief that people would have to not have to worry anymore about what we all have to worry about every single day, paying our bills, going to work, the grind. It's like, oh, finally the world is over. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
And as crazy as it seems, it's a new beginning. Right. Everything that happened before doesn't matter, and now you can start from here. And
it's escapism with no rules. Exactly. At that point, there's no rules. So
that's a good way to look at it. Interesting way to look at it, and that partially answers the question. But there are people who spend their entire day thinking about the end of the world, and like preparing.
The preppers
for the end of the world.
Sure, yeah.
Now, I've got nothing bad to say about those people. That's a lifestyle choice for anybody who wants to do that. Me personally, I want to live now and enjoy my life today. Yeah. And if the world ends tomorrow, hopefully I'm not around. I don't want to be around after the end of the world. I like to hear stories, fiction about what's gonna happen, but I don't want to live through it.
Yeah, that movie Don't Look Up. I don't know if you've ever seen that one.
Yeah,
Highly,
it was
it's that last
too tongue in cheek for me.
it's kind of a comedy, but it's that last dinner that I would not want to be at. I mean, I understand like it would be comforting somehow, but it wouldn't be because
That's if you knew it was coming.
yeah, if you knew it was coming.
I think
I
if
don't
the
wanna
world,
know.
I think if it's going to end, I don't think we would know it's coming. More than likely, where we live, we wouldn't know it's coming. It'd be over within minutes. We might have a few minutes to worry about it, but then it's going to be done. If we were living in, say, Montana, well, I don't know, do they still have a bunch of nuke sites out in Montana?
I don't know. I don't track
They
them.
used to. They used to have a bunch of nuke sites all over the Midwest, northern Midwest. But I think they've scaled back on that. Anyway, if you're in some mountainous area that's away from radioactive fallout, away from the nuclear blasts, you might actually survive. But what does that mean? What does that look like? Do you really want to be around for a couple of years or, a couple of months to find out what's going to happen next?
It's a good question. Maybe. The answer is maybe because I don't know. It could be really bad. If you don't have a Geiger counter, you're kind of messed up because you don't even know if you're being irradiated or not at that point. If you go into town, it's like the whole town could be irradiated and you'd have no idea.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that the people that do prepping are they want to live outside of an area that's going to be attacked. They want to have all their weapons and food stores and everything. So there's people that are literally preparing for that. Again, that's a lifestyle choice that I wouldn't want to make, and hopefully I'm not around to have to deal with that. So let's get back to reality and talk about a little bit more about history. Now, you've told me some things about your military career. What's interesting to me, one of the things that is interesting is how people deal with that transition from civilian to military and then from military back to civilian, because it could be jarring for some people.
Yeah.
And how did you deal with it?
Well, I'll preface this by saying that I was never deployed, so there's going to be a giant difference between, how I dealt with it and how someone who's actually been deployed into a war zone or something deals with it. But just from my personal experience, the initial shock of going in, as a cadet and going to, like, the first thing I had to do was go to a camp for 6 weeks, I think it was. And it was basically cadet basic. So it's kind of like basic training for Army, but we're coddled a little bit, just a little bit. So we had to do all the same kind of stuff, the obstacle courses, and, kids would quit left and right and, decide they just want to go home and stuff like that. And, they try to make sure that the people who get through the program are going to stick around and, be meaningful. Found out pretty quick the difference between myself and athletes, because I'm the exact opposite apparently. I guess maybe having a frame of 6 foot and weighing 155 pounds is not great when it comes to a lot of the things you got to do in the military. Backpack that weighs almost a third of me, and I'm trying to carry it on chicken legs. Not good, but I got through it. So for me, it was. I wasn't sleeping well, wasn't eating well. It was quite the shock until I realized that there were others there that were going through the same thing that I am. So I kind of figured, well, we all started counting the number of days until it was over. It's like 14 days and a wake up is how we would put it. That day that you wake up is the last time you have to be there and you're done. Maybe it's a graduation ceremony and you're out of there or something like that. So we would all just chant and count that last day, to count down the time. And I kind of just started focusing on, well, what can I learn? How can I improve my situation as a cadet? And then after it was over. So I was only in for 6 weeks initially, right? Because I'm a cadet, but also a civilian at the end of that 6 week period.
And you were also relatively young at that time, weren't you?
Yes. So I went to community college for 3 years before I transferred. So I think at that time I was probably 21, something like that, for that first camp. And
had you spent much time away from your family on your own?
No, not really. No, that was my first big thing because it was community college. I was living at home. So yeah, no, that was my first big away from the family.
I think that's one of the things that is most disruptive for people, is that you spend your whole life as your whole childhood growing up, and then you go in the military and you're completely away from anybody you know for a month and a half, 6 weeks, and you feel like the people don't like you. Nobody likes you, and even the people that you're with that are in the same boat, they don't know you, so you don't know if they like you or not. It's just really disorienting for people. I think it's intended to be that way, though.
I think it is. You feel very alone at first, and as a cadet especially, you're competing for scholarships, so it's very dog eat dog. So even though like you've got a bunkmate, your battle buddy, and you might develop a good friendship with them, but everyone else is trying to get the most points that they can. And also for me, it was tough. Like anytime we would do 72-hour operations, up all night, I would get sick. So I had to struggle through that problem as well. So I definitely wasn't going to be suited for infantry, for sure. But yeah, so at the end of that first camp, I probably weighed 135 pounds, maybe at 6 foot. My sister said I looked like a cancer patient. So thanks sis on that one. But she was right. I had the high and tight haircut, and
everybody loses a few pounds, but
yeah, I lost all
20
of them.
pounds is quite a bit.
Yeah, lost all of them. And it was definitely life-changing in terms of, like, you don't know how much you're going to suffer, and it's going to be hard, but you don't know how much you're going to be pushed past what you thought your limits were. And even though they were, coddling us a little bit, like we still had the midnight marches with the rucksack on, where you don't even know how far you're going, and it ends up being like 10, 12 miles or something like that, and it lasts all night, and you just keep shuffling along, and you realize like, oh, maybe I'm capable of doing more than I think I can. And that changes your mindset a lot. So I feel like that just even the short stints of active duty, for camps or training or whatever it was, really helped hammer that home, which is you're capable more than you think you are as a human. Agreed.
Okay, so we talked about your basic training, or your ROTC, which is pretty much basic training.
After that 6 weeks, then I started at UC Riverside, started in the ROTC program at San Bernardino. So that's how that all kind of ties in. And then the senior cadet camp happens between your third and fourth year of college. So I was only at Riverside for 2 years. So that first summer, in between those 2 years, is where I did the advanced camp. And that's basically where they're trying to sort you and rank you as a cadet. So when they assign people positions and or branches and all that kind of stuff, not branches, sorry, jobs, if you will, in the branch. Well, as an officer, it's not MOS. It's your assignment or whatever, you get your orders for your assignment.
Did you go to officer candidate school?
That's a whole different track. That's so actually I served as a cadet with people who were what we call prior service. So these were guys who were in the Army before they went to college. And instead of going through OCS, if you're in the Army already, you can go through OCS. Like if you were enlisted, you go through OCS and you can become an officer. That's how they do it if you're currently an enlisted man. But for us, it's just you finish the ROTC program. and assuming that you get enough points, you graduate and get your commission at the same time. Yeah, which I barely made it.
Did you get to choose armor?
Okay, so after all of my my Tom Clancy readings, I decided I wanted to be military intelligence. I was lacking the second part of that, so they said no. It was mostly It was mostly women, by the way.
Was that determined by your ASVAB?
That was determined by So what actually happened was when I was at the advanced camp. So this is the last one that you do, where they sort you into your ranking as a cadet amongst all the cadets in the whole program. I got horribly sick and hospitalized for 3 days right at one of the critical points of the camp. It was the 3 days where we do the Audie Murphy assault course. So that's the one where they're doing live fire over your heads. You're crawling through mud under barbed wire and all that stuff. I was so looking forward to that. But we had done a 72-hour operation, and we got drenched, and it was really cold. And I got sick. I tried to just ignore it for 2 days, and then I woke up with like 102-degree temperature one morning, and I could not lift my rucksack, and we had to do a march that day. I couldn't even lift it, and I was like, okay, I need to go on sick call, which I hated to do. Everyone hates to do that, especially knowing that the assault course was coming. And then they ended up taking me. They're like, you should have been in the hospital days ago. And I was like, whatever. So yeah, 3 days, 3 nights in the hospital. And they gave me some super powerful antibiotics that kind of got me back on my feet after that third day. Still felt pretty awful, but so all that stuff that I missed, those are points towards your graduation. So I missed literally 3 full days, including some of the biggest point earners. So when I graduated, I was like in the bottom third of the cadets, but still had enough points to graduate, even missing 3 days. I could have taken a vacation for 3 days and still graduated. So it's unfortunate. It happened. I was told, like, listen, either you can accept these points or you can be recycled and do the whole camp again. And
I was wondering if they use that term.
Recycled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they called it washed out in the Air Force. Because I served in the Air Force when I first went in the military. Yeah. I was later in the Army National Guard, but they called it was recycled or you're washed out.
Yeah.
And so what I was getting at with that is you said you had enough points to graduate whether you wanted to or not, so you just decided to take the points and then take whatever they gave you?
Yeah. I wouldn't expect, given how I got sick 2 camps in a row, I realized that, the odds that could happen again, and then I would have been recycled, not done any better. I probably could have had higher points overall. But at that point I was just like, all right, how is this going to really affect me? I don't really know. I had actually applied for active duty. And so 2 things happened. One was I didn't get military intelligence because my cadet scores weren't high enough. 2, they assigned me my second choice, which was armor, which I'm super happy they did that because I didn't realize that's where I really needed to be. And I didn't get active duty. And what they said was, because a lot of the other guys who were, in the same sort of ranking area that I was got active duty, and they said, well, because you went armor branch, this is a few years after Desert Storm. And we already have so many armor officers that we're now trying to get rid of them. And so we're not bringing any new ones in. So no active duty for me. So that's how I ended up in the National Guard. Yeah.
Well, it was still an interesting experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was 100% worth doing. I loved my time in the armor branch.
I'm sorry, back up just a second.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, can you explain a little bit, just for some people who may not know, maybe some people that are thinking about going in the military, and just explain to them the difference between active duty and National Guard.
Sure.
And the reserves. Okay. Because those are kind of 2 different things.
So there's actually another layer of that, the ready reserve, or they call it the list. So basically, if you get a full-time job, most of the time you're going to be considered active duty. So you're a full-time position in the military. That's your day job. If you go into the National Guard, basically you have the same rank. Like, then there's no difference in rank or job that you're going to be doing. But in the National Guard, you meet for 1 weekend a month, and so you're sort of activated 1 week a month, 1 weekend a month, and then 2 weeks in the summer you have to go full time to training, and that's your commitment.
You could be called up for active duty at any time if
Yes.
they needed to.
Yeah, like National Guard is typically led by or controlled by the state that you're in. But you can be called to active duty. A lot of Guard units were called like during Afghanistan, especially, and some for Desert Storm, but definitely Afghanistan. Guard units were called up to supplement the active duty units because it all kind of happened so fast. There wasn't really a chance for a big buildup. Desert Storm, for a decade, we knew we were going to do that, so there was much bigger of a buildup before Desert Storm. But yeah, so you could get called up. We never got called up.
Well, there was really nothing going on. I mean, it was
after Desert Storm, before Afghanistan, there was literally nothing going on.
So it's post Cold War, pre 9/11.
Yeah.
So you're in that period of where there's really nothing. I mean, it was peacetime.
Yeah, it was
for the
basically
most part,
peacetime.
throughout
There was nothing happening until 9/11. So
you got to go out once a month, play with tanks, play with guns, machine guns.
yeah.
Did you throw any hand grenades?
Just in training. Yeah, we did gunnery, tank gunnery, which is kind of my favorite thing to do. Good. Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar at all with the Abrams tank.
A little bit.
Okay, so just to talk a little bit about it, because it's one of my favorite. I don't have the bumper sticker, but I want to get one that says my other car is a A1 Abrams tank. Yeah. So in my time, it was the A1. So it was the early model of the Abrams. The British call it the Whispering Death. That's the name they gave to the tank. Pretty unique. It's very wide and not very tall, so it's a very squat tank. But the really cool feature of it is it has, well, there's a bunch of them, but my favorite is that it's a turbine engine, like a helicopter has, not a diesel. So they call it Whispering Death because it's very quiet for a 72-ton vehicle. And the turbine just sounds so cool when it's starting up. It's very sort of a Millennium Falcon, as you hear it kind of, screaming up. So I love that about it. And it has the top of the line cutting edge firing system that uses lasers and all kinds of sensors, for like detection of wind, speeds, temperature, and all that gets calculated into each shot that you take with it. So when I was in Kentucky, we had the chance to take them out in the field, to do maneuvers with them, to do gunnery with them, all those kinds of things. Just to learn the vehicle, and I just loved it. Any picture that I was anywhere near one of those tanks, I just had a grin from side to side, So yeah, 72 tons fully loaded. I had to have a security clearance because there are certain aspects of that tank that are top secret. So like top speed of it, can't say it. Everyone knows what it is now, but they wanted to keep that quiet, especially for Desert Storm, because speed was a big component of the strategy there. And then its armor is a depleted uranium, but the actual chemical makeup of it is secret. I don't know if they've declassified it by now, but it was in my time.
One of the things that I found mind-blowing about the armor is that it's called reactive. So when a projectile's coming into it, it actually explodes. The armor, pieces of the armor will explode to knock out that projectile before it hits.
So there are tanks that have reactive armor like that. The Abrams,
right, that is an add-on.
It's an add-on. Yeah, it's an add-on. But the basic depleted uranium armor, what it actually does is when the dart comes in, because it's also a depleted uranium dart that tanks fire. When it comes in, because it's like a similar material but denser, it can actually deflect it. So it'll come in, the armor, the way that the honeycomb structure is inside the armor will actually grab it and redirect it. Hopefully like down through the ground or something like that, away from the crew compartment. But also, one of my other favorite things about that tank is it actually has four weapons. So you've got the main 114 millimeter cannon. Sometimes I think 115. I'm not sure if there's a model difference or what, but somewhere around there. This is going back 30 years now, so I'm trying to remember it all. The second one is the what they call the Co machine gun. There's a different term for it. I could probably dig it up in my past, but it's basically coax. That's it, because it's coaxial to the main cannon, and that's for crunchies or infantrymen in front of the tank. So you just want to mow them down with a machine gun.
Wait a minute, man.
Yeah.
You can't just say crunchies and keep going. What is a crunchy?
Oh, that's what the tankers would call infantrymen, because that's the sound they make when you run them over. So, and then you have the loader has a machine gun. It's just a basic, kind of like a SAW, squad assault weapon kind of machine gun. I forget the exact nomenclature of that weapon. And then you have the commanders, like this commander has their own turret, and on that turret is a Modus, a 50 caliber machine gun, I just love that thing.
50 cals are fun to shoot.
They're fun to shoot. Yeah. A lot of fun. So that's how the A1 is set up. So really with the A1, once the gunner finds a target, lasers it, the loader will shove the shell in, flip a little latch up and yell up, which means that it's loaded. And then the commander gives the command to fire, right? And the shot goes out. So then the commander's looking for another target. He tells the gunner swings over, lasers it, the loader does his thing again, and the whole cycle repeats. That's how the A1 works. But the A2, which I didn't get trained on, but we heard a lot about it because it's just awesome. They got smart and they realized that you actually have a tank with two turrets. So why not use that second turret, which is the commander's turret, which was originally for that 50 caliber machine gun. Use that as a complete second turret for the firing mechanism of the tank. So with the A2, the commander could laze his own target, and then as fast as that loader can load the second shell, the gunner can just press fire, and the gun just swings over and boom, fires that second shell. So you speed up the cycle time like crazy fast, and so one tank can engage far more targets than they could before. And all of it on the move. Like you don't have to stop with those tanks. You can just go balls to the wall as fast as you want, and that turret remains rock steady pointed at the target. That's how we just annihilated the Iraqi tanks. I think they were using, like their top end tanks were like T-72s, which was, when I was going through training, that's like the top tier tank that we were trained to fight against, and they just didn't stand a chance.
I mean, I understand. Part of it was their training, because you got, a military that's doesn't really want to fight. They were forced out there to be on the battlefield rather than wanting to be there. Like most of our American troops are people who are fighting for freedom or something that they believe in strongly. And but these people were forced into combat and probably into military service to begin with.
Sure, yeah.
They're using technology that they're not that familiar with. They're not trained properly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's obviously going to be a one-sided battle when you get to that point. Going into that battle, and I know you weren't there, but you could kind of, from your training, you can put yourself in the mindset of what it would take to go into combat.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be prepared to go into that.
It's a I don't know if double-edged sword is the right way to look at it, but on one hand, anyone who's been trained up to do something, you kind of feel compelled to do the job, right? But on the other hand, none of us have death wishes. So you should never be sad about not seeing combat. That would be kind of nuts. But yeah, you're also trained to do the job and you're willing to do it. So if you get called up, it's just, that's what you're doing that day. Unfortunately, well, depending on how you want to look at it, I didn't get called up. So it's good and bad at the same time. I would have been happy to serve. But yeah, just didn't happen. And actually I had another chance to go active when we were fighting the Yakima National Guard. I know now's a good time to tell that story, but for those folks out there who are listening to this who, maybe never had a second chance, like I'd love to tell that story because it was a pretty interesting experience. And I had someone go to bat for me to try to get me on active duty as a result of that experience.
Well, yeah, let's get into, so the meat of the conversation is about tank warfare, your experiences in that arena. And so but okay, before we get into that, I know we'll go down that, but as a commander, you had the responsibility of 4 tanks under your command, right?
Yeah, a platoon of tanks is 4 tanks.
The responsibility of a tank commander is a massive responsibility because you got so many components and 3 people that you're responsible for, or 4 people, including yourself, that you're responsible for. As a platoon
leader, yeah.
You've got 16 people under your responsibility. How did you handle that? And mentally, how did you prepare for that?
So first of all, as a cadet, you're used to being in platoons and, squads. So the smallest element is a squad, right? You've got 4 guys in a squad. So each of a tank would basically be a squad, and all 4 tanks would be a platoon. So you kind of get used to that structure. And then you're trained to, take on the platoon leader role and higher up roles. So you kind of get a feel for what it would be like if you were, say, a captain and you had 4 platoons under your command or something like that. So you kind of get a little bit of that. But also one of the things that I did after I think it was the advanced camp, is you get a chance to go be an attachment to an actual unit. So I actually went to Fort Carson, Colorado, and I was attached to a unit there. It wasn't an armor unit, but it was basically they ran the motor pool. And so you got to see all the vehicles, coming in and out and kind of what the issues are with, what needs to be repaired, what parts are missing and so on. So it's really just a way to get your feet wet in the actual Army. So you kind of have an idea of what it's going to be like. So all of that helps, but it's really just an immersion thing. You just have to be put in that position. Respect is given to the position, not to you as an individual. It's up to you to keep that respect and potentially earn even more of it. So you got to get your guys to understand, kind of what drives you and what your motivations are, how you're going to look out for them, how you're going to help them do their job better. All those kinds of things that are part of management. And then also the leader part of it, which is, you got to show that you're willing to go the extra mile. So some of it's education, some of it's training, some of it is learning on the job.
How important is it to know all the working components of the tank, not just the people? You know how to deal with the people. They teach you that in officer school.
Yeah. So,
but
exactly.
the technical part of it, how much about the tank do you have to know?
So as a platoon leader, it's different. Like the level of knowledge is different. Basically, as a platoon leader, I wouldn't get anywhere near cleaning, maintaining, repairing a tank at all. My guys are there to do that. So even within a crew of 4 on a tank, like my platoon sergeant. So the way it's structured is commander has his vehicle and he has a wingman. And then the platoon sergeant has his vehicle and then he has a wingman. That's how you get the 4 tanks, right? So the platoon sergeant is going to make sure that all of the tanks are being maintained and cleaned and prepped ammo loaded, oil topped off, fuel topped off, all that stuff. That's part of what his job is to make sure all that happens. Because as a lieutenant, you're in the tent with the colonel going over the strategy, the battle plan, the line of departure, the objective, kind of what successful outcome looks like. You're doing all that stuff, which none of the NCOs and stuff are doing. They're all busy with making sure we can even get to the line of departure, making sure we have the ammo to shoot at the enemy and all that stuff. So that's how we kind of split things up. So you rely very heavily on your platoon sergeant for almost everything. And then he relies on you to know what the hell you're doing as the leader. You got to know where you're going, why, and how to fight 4 tanks, and then how you fit into the battalion, how the battalion fits into the regiment or whatever, and it just kind of grows from there.
Let's talk a little bit about that Yakima exercise. What was this, a deployment or?
So technically, our unit was attached to the Yakima National Guard for the purpose of going up there and fighting a mock battle against them in the Yakima range. So
where is that?
That's Washington. Near Fort Lewis, Washington.
What, like, is it near Seattle?
Oh, I haven't actually looked at it on a map to know exactly where it is. It's way out in the middle of nowhere.
Is it desert or forest?
It has both, but in the range that we were operating in is very desert-like, and that was intentional because they wanted us to experience what it would be like, over in the Middle East. So it was the terrain was very interesting, and it all plays into to what happened there.
I'll let you set the stage. What year and where were you coming from to go over there to Yakima? Where were you coming from?
So we had to load our tanks. I believe we loaded at Fort Irwin, which is in the California desert, also called the National Training Center, and then basically took them by rail up to Washington. And there was an advanced group that got up there to receive the tanks and offload them and, put them in the yard and all that stuff for us when we arrived. But that's how we got up there. And so our company was led by a captain who was originally enlisted, and he went officer candidate school, OCS. And it was an interesting experience with him because I don't know what they teach people at officer candidate school. Having never been through it myself, I haven't even heard any stories about it. But this captain, I came through a very regimented education about how operation orders are handed down. The term operation order means a very specific set of instructions, and it goes from the very top down to the very bottom. Ultimately, I would be issuing the last operation order to my to my 16 guys or 15 guys. That's the only time it stops, is when it's at the very bottom, and it's a very specific set of key pieces of information. It's things like the commander's intent, which means what's the point of us doing this? Why, what is his expectation, right? It's things like the line of departure, line of advance, what the objective is, how we're expected to behave on the objective. Are we, blowing through it and setting up on the other side, a defensive perimeter around it? Do we stop, lay down heavy fire and then go, it's all laid out in the operations order. This captain didn't apparently know that. So his style was, okay, we had our tanks, we were making sure that they were ready to go, all gassed up and everything. He's like, all right, guys, let's go up. We got to get to this line of advance or whatever by, 0800 and go. And I'm like, what are you talking about, sir? What are you talking about? And he goes, well, that's what we're doing. We're going to just go down range, and then we're going to, meet the Yakima National Guard and fight them or whatever. And I was like, okay, when are you going to issue me the operations order? Now, it was a little awkward because the overseers were there. These were the guys who were keeping an eye on the entire battle, so they were flying around in helicopters and Humvees and stuff, and they were part of every key conversation that was being had by leadership. And so the captain was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "An operations order, you know?" And so I actually had a operation order. It's like a almost like a plastic covered, you know, sheet that listed everything down there. It's like a cheat sheet, right? And I was like, well, you know, one of these, because that's what I'm used to. I mean, I don't know how to operate without one of those things. And he looks at it, he's like, okay, let me, you know, I'll figure this out and I'll get back to you. So like an hour and a half later, he calls me over and he's got a fairly legitimate operations order and he gives it to me. I'm like, great. And I take it. In the meantime, since I was really confused about what was going on here, like this is very unnerving to have to tell the captain to issue me an order so I know what the hell is going on here. I'm not going to tell 15 guys to hop into, you know, 72-ton vehicles and just go over there and then we're going to go that direction. Why not? Right? Why not? So I'm like, okay, well, what's the next thing I can be doing? And so there's this, one of the NCOs he was the snarkiest guy. He was so funny, but he's whip smart. I brought him over and he's really creative too. And I was like, listen, I need you to make a terrain model of this terrain because it's a really weird terrain. It's basically a giant valley. I'll try to describe this for people who are listening, but so imagine you're staring right down the middle of a giant valley. And on the left side, you have kind of like gently sloping hills up into mountains. But on the right side of the valley, you have a whole bunch of draws. So these are like almost like wrinkles in the landscape, like pretty good size, going all the way down the right side of the valley. So we had a couple of options. We could go right down the flat part of the valley and just be sitting ducks. And I was like, well, I think what we should do is we're going to go over these ripples here, but we're going to do it in such a way where they have no idea how many tanks are coming, right? And one thing about the National Guard I'll say is it's hard to get 4 working tanks all at the same time because you are the lowest priority for parts. So we only could muster 3. So I had 3 tanks in my platoon. So I'm already down a tank and we're just doing 1 platoon at a time. This is not a company-wide thing. So anyway, the NCO makes this great terrain map, right? And then I get the whole platoon around and we do all kinds of, like basically practicing what would happen if we had contact, what commands the tank commanders would be giving their gunner, their drivers, the whole thing. Like we just kept walking through it for an hour and a half until I got my operations order. Overseer was apparently watching the whole thing. To me, this was just what you do. You know, this was nothing unusual. This was the job. So we got done with that. And so we executed the plan, you know, just to shorten the thing a little bit. I had my wingman go up, take a look. If you didn't see any enemy, didn't make contact, we go over the ripple, and then I'd send the rest of them one by one until we were all over. It's only 3 tanks. We went all the way down the valley that way. And once we got down the valley, we looked left, and the entire enemy position, we had already flanked it. And we came from their rear left quarter and annihilated all of them with 3 tanks. Wow. And there was like, I don't know, 18 vehicles or something, 19 vehicles, just destroyed them all. They didn't even see us. Yeah. We just, and the last one, I had my driver going full barrow down one of these draws at a nest of 3 tanks, all facing the wrong direction, and just blew them all away. And then Humvee comes screaming in and does like a 4-wheel slide right in front of my tank. So I have the driver step on the brake. Almost broke a rib on that one. And he's screaming at me, just screaming. Apparently he was a safety officer and I had gotten far too close. So he was pissed, right? So we go back and we do our after action review, and our overseer was just like, there's really not much to say. I mean, that was like a perfect mission. You guys just destroyed all of them. They didn't even see you coming. I don't know how you do that with, 3 72-ton tanks. So why don't you just chill out and we'll just sit here. And I was like, I was just worried about that guy that was yelling at me. And he's like, oh, he's just mad because he didn't even know you were there. And he thought his guys were going to win. Wow. So that changed a lot for me. So just to finish the story, I mentioned I was given a award. So First, I was reprimanded for getting too close. So I violated safety protocols. Second thing I was reprimanded for was my look, the way I was looking. I hadn't shaved in 3 days or 4 days. I hadn't slept in 3 days. Yeah, hadn't shaved, hadn't slept. And I think at that point I was up for 4. I couldn't sleep. I was just too jazzed or whatever. I don't know what it was. So I just looked like crap, right? So first I get the reprimands, and then a Jeep pulls up and the base commander gets out. So now I've got a general standing in front of me. I have no idea what's going on. And he gives me the Army Achievement Medal, which I was shocked. I was like, well, yeah, we had a good training session. That's all it was, right? Like, this isn't anything special. But the way he put it was like, the way that I insisted on things being done the right way and showed the guys, like, so I was not only training the captain, but I was also training my guys how it should be done, so that when I'm not there or the next lieutenant comes along, they hold that lieutenant to that standard. I didn't understand any of that at the time, but yeah, it was really cool. It's an award that's given. It's a lower level award for someone who shows like meritorious service or does something unusually good. So that's what it was. Yeah, going above and beyond. So that was cool. And I got his challenge coin too. So I got the base commander's challenge coin, which I kind of like that too. But so that changed my life. So not only,
you know what? I'm sorry, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes we get carried away. We get into, deep into the weeds on a topic.
Yeah.
We forget that people listening might not know some of the things that we're talking about.
Sure.
So can you explain what a commander's coin is?
Yeah. So a challenge coin is, so it's literally a metal coin that has the insignia of the officer who's handing it out. Often they're, like it would be a patch on your shoulder. So it's like their regiment or a battalion or whatever it is. Often their name on it. And it's basically, you have to carry it around with you, because if you happen to come across that officer again and he pulls out his challenge coin, if you don't have yours on you, but he gave it to you, you owe him a drink. That's basically what it is. And they're very highly collectible. So
it's a high-level drinking game.
Yeah, it's very military drinking game. It's never happened to me where someone slapped down their challenge coin and I owed them a drink. So,
do you still have it?
Oh yeah.
Have you received
they're like
any
my prized
others?
possessions. Oh
Have
yeah.
you got any? Yeah, you got more. Okay.
Yeah, I've gotten a few more. Yeah, really, really cool moment of my life, and it helped me understand what leadership is better than any book, any movie, any story that someone else told me. Right there in that moment, I finally really truly got it. But that actually isn't the most life-changing thing that happened that day. For real, one of my soldiers who, was a really great guy, kind of quiet or whatever, there was a moment when I was kind of alone with him, and he just looks at me just out of nowhere and goes, sir, I just want to let you know I would follow you in battle any day. Just like that. And I had to take like 10 minutes on my own after that. It hit me like a ton of bricks, so that's when I really got it. That's when I understood what it was all about. Yeah.
From a person with experience in military and leadership, if anybody is listening to this who's thinking about going into the military, what are a couple of things you would say to them, either to encourage them to go or to be cautious about going? And what should they look out for? Because I know, just to kind of pad that question a little bit more, there's a lot of people who get enlisted. Once they're enlisted and they get into their job, they feel like they were deceived into coming in and making this kind of commitment. Now they're stuck for 4 years or 6 years, however long it is.
It's a complex question. I think that it's important to understand why you're doing it in the first place. I think that's the most critical part of it. What are you getting out of it? what's motivating you to want to sign your life away for 4 years or whatever your commitment's going to be, and have a plan for what happens after that, so that you're headed in the right direction. The thing about military is, like, you do have some say in sort of the directions that you head in, but it's not 100% of the say. So you could get sidetracked in whatever you had planned to do. I would also think about getting into areas that are going to be needed. So like, there are people that want to be a soldier and just be on the front lines and be, banging away with their M16. Go for it. That's great. But what if you also have other interests? Like, maybe you like technology, maybe you like video games. Give a thought to how you could deploy those skills in the military. And people don't think this way for some reason, because you can go into your recruiter and basically say, like, listen, I'm really good at video games. I want to be a drone pilot. And now they've got some direction to send you, right? They'll have you take a test to make sure you're competent enough to do something like that. And they will try to get you, they're not going to be able to please everybody, but they'll try to get you slotted in that general direction. And maybe you'll end up being a drone pilot. You never know. But going in with no plan, I think, is generally a bad idea, because they're going to ask you at some point early on. And if you're like, I don't know, then they're like, oh, here's some cannon fodder, another one for the meat grinder. The other thing is, understand that you're not going to be the boss for a very long time. And that is part of being in the military. You're going to be told what to do for years and years. And that is your role. That is your role. So, like, if you've got attitude, probably not a good place for you to go is the military.
Or if you need an attitude adjustment, that's a great place to go.
Yeah. I actually went, not just because of what we talked about, but also because I recognized that there was a part of myself that needed to be trained in leadership. I wasn't getting that at home. Not that my parents should be training me for something like that. And I wanted to do the best I could in life. And that was part of a big reason why I went as an officer and not enlisting. It's always good to be in shape. If you try to go through basic training out of shape, that's going to be far worse for you. It's going to be a much harder time. So I'd get in shape before I even start that.
Just reminded me of some of the people that I was in basic training with.
Yeah. And then I would also think about what branch, right? So you could have, like, just think like the scale of the cushiest to the hardest jobs, right? So I would lay it out this way. Air Force, cushiest jobs, right? Navy, second cushiest, Army, third cushiest, and Marines, never cushy at all. Like the worst, the hardest, the toughest. If you're testing your mettle and you're a physical specimen, dude, go Marines. Those are the badasses of the military, right? No offense to any of the other branches, but Army guy saying that, like, it's just the fact. Also, like, if you want to rub shoulders with highly intelligent people, go Air Force. Maybe Navy if you don't want to do Air Force. You're going to be around some really, really smart people, because those are the guys flying the planes, running the aircraft carriers. Like, these are really, really sharp people. So give some thought to, like, where you're headed, why you're doing it, and who you want to be around before you make that decision.
And not to leave out the Space Force and the Coast Guard. Okay, those are very important branches of our military, and they always need good people.
Space Force is a great Netflix series, by the way. I don't know if you've seen that.
It's stupid. I watched it.
Steve Carell's the best.
Don't waste your time. Go watch the X-Files instead. You'll get a much more rounded perspective on life from the X-Files.
Yeah. Coast Guard if you want to get wet. Space Force if you want to, I don't know, die in space. Whatever.
I mean, Space Force, I really don't know what they do. I think they really took over a branch or a part of the Air Force that was, space focused, not even based. They just monitor space. And I think cyberspace is now part of that. So
Space Force runs the Earth part of the Galactic Federation. Sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face.
Wow, this podcast is over.
Sure is. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to part 1 of my interview with Jeremy Bailey. In the next episode, we talk about the future of tank warfare and how artificial intelligence is reshaping the battlefield. Jeremy also shares 2 fascinating and completely unrelated experiences from his life. Both encounters left him questioning what he really saw. Thanks for listening. Dead Hand Radio, signing off.